Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, I found another thought experiment that we can use to better prepare for anything, but especially in this case, what is an EMP attack and can you survive one? In my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, we can survive one depending on the severity of the EMP attack and or coronal mass ejection. An EMP attack is a man-made event, whereas a coronal mass ejection is a natural event that comes from the sun. Right? A burst of radioactive particles that shoots from the sun to the earth at very high speeds that makes a lot, if not most, of the electronics that we depend on unusable. Pretty much void, null and void. Okay? So EMP attacks remain one of the main threats to the world in the 21st century. This is because almost every hospital, homestead, supermarket, communication channel, banking system, and other corporate settings connect to an electrical grid. If a high-altitude electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear attack was to strike today, it would hurt our environment, well-being, family, and assets. Ladies and gentlemen, it would turn us back 100 years, in my opinion. Since the occurrence of an EMP attack gives little to no room for survival reaction, the aftermath may be uncontrollable without adequate preparation. Key word, ladies and gentlemen, preparation. Luckily for you, we compiled this article to show you particular EMP attack survival techniques you can apply now. Outstanding. This article actually has a lot of great information. EMP attack survival. Short for electromagnetic pulse, EMP is an intense burst of electromagnetic energy due to a sudden and quick acceleration of charged particles. The resulting energy destroys any electronic devices it comes across. The effect may spread to damaged buildings, power lines, and even motor vehicles. There are three major causes of EMP, which are namely nuclear explosions, solar storms, which is really a CME, and lightning bolts. Nuclear warheads occur at high altitudes. The result of high altitude electromagnetic pulse could arise in soaring heights. For example, the US tested a nuclear bomb which was 402.3 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean. The effects of the electrical disturbance effect occurred 1,448 kilometers away in Hawaii. But that's not all. It significantly damaged telephone lines, streetlights, and Soviet satellites. As you can realize from the above example, an EMP attack's effects may be unimaginably destructive. Worse yet, now that there are electrical components in above 90% of inhabited areas, the consequences would be incredible to our lives, unlike in the 20th century. History of EMP attacks. Have there been cases before? You bet there have. The first ever case of an EMP attack was recorded in 1859, which is known as the Carrington event. It was a scary experience that involved emissions of flares and sunspot, followed by what is described as a geomagnetic storm. And the effects were, ladies and gentlemen, is that the telegraph system, which was like their biggest technology back then, in both the US and parts of Europe, threw sparks and they went down. Since then, there have been few modest cases and scares, including a mild storm that affected parts of Canada in 1989. At that time, it jammed weather stations and radio signals, leading to many believing a nuclear attack was impending. A debate on the possible threat posed by EMPs to the modern society has been raging for a while. Unfortunately, the government doesn't seem serious enough to protect its citizens against what many scientists now say is a real threat to humanity. In fact, most experts agree that an EMP attack is far more lethal than a nuclear bomb, which begs the question, how ready are you should it strike today? Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and put a plug in for Grayman Prepping's channel. He did interview an expert on EMPs and how to protect yourself from EMPs here a while back. I'm going to go ahead and leave the link to that interview on the upper right hand corner of the video. I think this is the right hand corner, but you'll see it pop up. And here, ladies and gentlemen, it says how to prepare for an attack. Before we can show you how to survive these attacks, it is important to mention that an EMP cannot directly harm you. I would say no, unless you had like a pacemaker inserted in your chest for your heart. But then again, I'm not sure about that 100%. It's that a pacemaker is an electronic device. right, that gives your heart some electronic signals every now and then when it needs it. So I would say maybe it would affect that. Additionally, it's been proven that older vehicles with more metallic bodies and less electrical wiring are less prone to the pulses related during a strike. As such, most of the methods we share here help to protect your lifestyle from getting disrupted. This is because an attack could affect your electronics, make it harder for you to move around, or even expose you to burglars. Well, ladies and gentlemen, even if your entire household, if every piece of electronic that you have is protected against EMP, that's not going to protect you against the masses that did not prepare ahead of time. So a requirement, in my opinion, to any prepper's stock is a way to defend your supplies. Because in defending your supplies, you are defending your family. And I wanted to go ahead and show you this, ladies and gentlemen. That way you can revisit this article if you like. But they have a lot of good stuff here. It says, get ready for immediate response. And then you click down on this and it gives you what they say. Plan for the basics. You click down on this and they give you what they say. So I'm going to leave the link to this article at the very bottom of the description of this video in case you want to come and revisit it and take a look at what they have to say on how you can prepare for an EMP. However, I wanted to go over another part of EMPs. Why isn't the U.S. preparing for EMP war like the rest of the world? You're likely already familiar with the 2009 EMP Commission Report. I'll leave the link to this article as well. That way, if you want to go and revisit or visit that EMP report, all you have to do is click on this hyperlink right here. It was the third report that raised the issue of EMP preparedness for America. It's notorious, stating that just 1 year after an EMP attack, 90% of the American population would be dead. Caused alarm through multiple sectors of society. To truly understand just how very risky it is, I believe we all have to look at the battle plans of some of the nations that hate America the most. Let's start with Russia. Within the text of this Russian general, Vladimir Slipchenko, he explains how EMPs are the greatest revolution in military affairs in history. According to Slip, I'm just going to call him Slip. Right? According to Slip, the possession of an EMP renders an enemy's army, navies, and air forces completely obsolete, and it's hard to argue with him there. If you can't get your missile defense system online, if your tanks won't run, if your planes have just fallen out of the sky, you're kind of screwed, aren't you? End quote. Now, what about China? Things are no different here. EMP capabilities, theory, and defenses seem to be going relatively fast here, just like in Russia. In the PLA textbook, author Shen notes the importance of developing China's EMP defense to neutralize and check the US if needed. Other Chinese military journal articles specifically state that the US is more vulnerable than any other country in the world to EMP attacks. Let me say that one more time. That way you can take your preparedness a little more serious if you're not. Other Chinese military journal articles specifically state that the US is more vulnerable than any other country in the world to EMP attacks. I believe that this is singling out of Americans should cause eyebrows to be raised. Iran. In Iran, not only are EMP attacks fully endorsed, but battle plans for their use are being drawn up as well. And here a former director of the CIA says Tehran's military is planning to be able to make a nuclear EMP attack. Woosley goes on to say that passive defense and other Iranian military writings are well aware that nuclear EMP attack is the most efficient way of killing people through secondary effects over the long run. And what do they mean about that, ladies and gentlemen? It means that it's effective. How? We lose power, we lose everything. People start turning on each other. Remember earlier, it stated that within a year, it's been noted that about 90% of the population would die off. Why? Because without power, without energy, our way of life goes away. And most people are not prepared for that. So prepare for that. Right? Prepare for that as well. And preparing for that could be preparing for like anything else. Just have your 5 B's of prepping in order and ramp up your prepping if you can. The rationale appears to be that most people will starve to death, not because of an EMP, but because they live in a materialistic society dependent upon modern technology. We'll go ahead and end that at that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to leave the link to both of these articles. I think they're pretty important to read. and so that you can freshen up on what things you need in order to be better prepared. Having said that, thank you very much for joining in today. Thank you for spending a little time of your day here with me today. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I am out.